The Downtown Rams podcast is brought to you today by Draft. Looking for the best fantasy sports site on the planet? Sign up with Draft today. For a limited time only, our listeners will receive $3 matching their first deposit of at least $10. Use promo code DTR or visit draft.com/DTR to sign up now. Draft. Fantasy for the people. Now enjoy the show.
Caught by Brandon Cooks. Shoot your arrows. Cooper Kupp plucks it out of the air and gives the Rams the lead. Robert Wood, touchdown. LA! Dog goes crashing into the end zone. Aaron Donald almost beat the football there. Corey Littleton, have yourself a day. Picked off. Marcus Peters coming off the edge, and Ryan will be wrapped up by Clay Matthews. Everett in stride. Wow!
Franklin Myers gets his hand down there.
Leto got a hand on it. Did he pick it? He did! Racing down the sideline is Akeem Talib. Gurley for MVP! Touchdown LA! Picked off by John Johnson. Well, it's Dante Fowler who is able to get to breathe. Greg Zuerlein sends the Rams to the Super Bowl! LA will play for the Lombardi!
Hey guys, welcome back to Downtown Rams. It is episode 252. I'm joined here with my co-host Jake Ellenbogen, and today we have a very special guest, host of the Class Act Pod, Barry McCockiner. Like most of you, I'm a big fan of Barry on Twitter. I've actually known Barry for quite a while. I'm pretty good friends with his wife's boyfriend, so we've been familiar with each other, and I was really excited to get him onto the podcast. Barry, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, Barry, big fan. Happy to have you on. Thanks so much for coming on.
So, Barry, I'm really interested to ask you this because this answer varies depending on who I ask. But just in your opinion, what do you think right now is the hottest topic in the NFL?
Well, the hottest topic, I'd probably have to say the officiating. I think that it seems like after every big game this year, and every national televised game, it seems like all anybody can talk about after the game is over is, certain calls and the refereeing. I mean, this past Monday Night Football game between the Packers and the Lions is really the biggest example that I've seen. And I think everybody could probably have seen this coming with the new offensive or whatever pass interference rules that were a result from the botched call at the end of last year's NFC Championship game. So I feel like that's really the biggest story to me, at least. I mean, if you don't want to, if you're talking about actually like what's the biggest story in terms of playing and players, I think as of right now, it probably would be Patrick Mahomes' injury. But in terms of the overall season so far, I think the biggest story has been the officiating.
Yeah, I could definitely agree with that. I think, all of the comparisons between the Packers and the Lions and the calls that the Packers have gotten, and that stat that everyone's sharing around Twitter about the Packers getting helped out the most by the refs. I forget exactly what it's called. But I mean, yeah, I totally agree with you. I think after the Rams-Saints game, just us being Rams fans in general, we know the Saints fans were not cool with that call. Most of the NFL seemed to not be, and then I think just the reviewing of the pass interference call, I think, has been a huge issue, in my opinion, this year. I think it slows down the game, and I don't think it's really helped the game. And I think that there have been calls that have been obvious that they refuse to overturn because they just don't want to make that call. So I do agree with you. I think that there has definitely been an issue with the officiating. It hasn't just been one team. It's been multiple teams. So I think anytime you talk about the NFL officiating, I think you're on the right side of it if you're complaining about their, the officiating there. But I want to ask you, which team this season has impressed you the most?
Wow. See, so we're only 6 weeks in right now. I mean, it's trying to figure out. I mean, in terms of preseason expectations, I mean, the 49ers have probably been the most surprising team in terms of a pleasant surprise. And I know as Rams fans, you guys aren't happy about that. But, to see them start 5-0, and then I don't think it's going to last, but I think Buffalo starting 4-1 has been a bit of a surprise as well. And I think that the Buffalo's defense is legit. Unfortunately, I don't think that I don't think Josh Allen is very good. So I think he kind of puts a cap on their ceiling. But I think in terms of preseason expectations to where they are now, I think the 49ers have been probably the biggest surprise in terms of how good they've been.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. I mean, we had firsthand experience with that when our Rams played them. That was a team that honestly going into the year, I thought, you know what, they're going to be better. They're nothing I'm worried about. Then, of course, they started to get better, and then I watched the game that they played the Rams and was honestly very impressed. I mean, Jake and I, we talked about it obviously after the game on the show, and that is a very well-rounded team, I think, and I think especially that defensive front on the 49ers has been absolutely incredible. And Nick Bosa, I think, is somebody that we all kind of expected to do well, but he's just, I think, completely blown people out of the water. So I'd have to agree that, that's the team, I think, for me, that has also most impressed me. But to flip that around...
hold on. Before we move on, I just want to say that Nick Bosa is not racist, so he should probably win an award for how not racist he is. I just wanted to put that out there.
1,000%. I agree.
Nick Bosa is not a racist, so please stop calling him a racist. Okay, so we can move on now. I just want to get that out there.
Oh, definitely. No, I definitely agree. I remember when all that was happening, I thought it was atrocious. But, Nick Bosa, good guy, good player, for sure. To flip that around, which team has least impressed you this season? I mean, what team to you kind of just completely has dropped the ball so far?
Well, I think the Chargers are a good answer for that. I mean, they were coming off of a 12-win season last year, and everybody, it seems like every year they get picked as dark horse title candidates, and right now they're 2-4, and it's just seems like they're flying under the radar for how bad they've been. There's that, obviously, in terms of comparison to the preseason expectations, the fact that they're 2-4. I think in general, it's just kind of incredible just how horrible the Dolphins have been. I mean, they have an argument. They're on pace to being literally the worst team of all time. So I think if you're talking about, at least everything is relative and there's always context. But I think in general, in terms of, I think compared to preseason expectations, it might be the Chargers. But overall, it has to be the Dolphins because they're literally they're probably the worst NFL team I've ever seen.
Yeah, they're pretty bad. I don't know how you trade away Minka Fitzpatrick, and I don't know why they're even considering trading away Xavier Howard. But normally when you're rebuilding and you're blowing up a team, you trade away the older talents, not the younger that you could build with. But nonetheless, I want to get your thoughts on the two Super Bowl teams last year, the Rams and of course the Patriots. How do you feel coming into this year and so far what we've seen through 6 weeks? About these two teams a season removed from the Super Bowl?
Well, for the Patriots, I mean, I think it's been business as usual. I think going into the season, everybody knew that their schedule was pathetically weak. And so far, they've pretty much done what they're supposed to do, which is basically steamroll all the cupcake opponents that they've played. And I mean, they're going to win double-digit games every year as long as they have Belichick and as long as they play in the AFC East. So really, the Patriots' success is just kind of par for the course. It's not really surprising. I think the Rams started out really good. I believe they started 3-0, and then since then they dropped 3 straight, and they let Jameis Winston take a dump all over them. And then then there was the heartbreaking loss to Seattle, and then there was last week's incredibly disappointing loss to the 49ers. So I think if you're the Rams, I think they've been another one of those underwhelming teams so far. They're still 3-3. Obviously, it's still too early to make any final declarations on their season. But as of right now, I think the Rams have been underwhelming, and I think Jared Goff has really gotten exposed a little bit. Really, ever since the Monday night shootout last year against Kansas City, his production hasn't been very good. And the fact that they just gave him a big contract, and the fact and you combine that with Todd Gurley having arthritis, I think I've said it before. I think the Rams window to compete is a little bit smaller than most people would think. And I'm sure you guys aren't very happy to hear that, but that's just my opinion on it.
Right. Well, yeah. Obviously, like you said, we start out 3-0, and then now we're at 3-3, and that's something that Jake and I have been trying to dissect on the show, because we've been, obviously not happy, or thrilled with the way that things are going. And, I think that there's been like a lot of different factors. I think you pointed out some of them. And then also, things like, unless it's, decision making by Jared Goff has not been what we had hoped it would be. It hasn't been great, honestly. And then our offensive line has just done a complete 180. Our linebacking core hasn't been great, although we are hoping that that our trades pay off, because we did trade obviously for Jalen Ramsey, and then we did get Kenny Young from the Ravens. So we're kind of interested to see how that plays out this week against the Falcons, which is a team that we think the Rams should be able to easily beat. But obviously that game is going on tomorrow, so we'll have to wait and see that. But I'm just curious. So what is the biggest change that you would make in the NFL right now? And by that, I mean, like, is there a certain coach or player you would cut, or maybe trading? So a team should trade for a certain player? Because that's something that's always fun to just talk about. Like, if you were the GM of any team in the NFL, what big change would you make?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Are you asking me what move I would like to see most?
Yeah, like what big blockbuster trade, or for example, like some teams think that like, this is really bold. I don't think this should happen, but some people think like Miami should trade for a quarterback, or some people think the Cowboys should fire Jason Garrett or something like that.
Well, all right. Well, I was hoping as an Eagles fan that the Eagles were going to go for Jalen Ramsey, because the Eagles secondary is just a mess. So obviously that went out the window as soon as he signed with the Rams. So that was really my biggest wish. As an Eagles fan, I was hoping that we'd get some help there. Now that there's no chance of that happening, I don't really know. I think I don't really know the free agent market, or what it's like, or how many big name players are looking to be traded. I think there's maybe possibility of AJ Green going somewhere else out of Cincinnati. I'm not sure, but Jalen Ramsey was definitely the big fish that I wanted to see moved, because I thought the Eagles could have made a play for him, but obviously that didn't help. And then you kind of have the Antonio Brown's just kind of sitting out there in free agency, and he has this whole mess. So it was going to be. I was wondering maybe a team that's lacking receiver depth or help would maybe take a flyer on him, but I don't know if that's going to happen. So, but yeah, like I said, I think Jalen Ramsey was I wanted to see that happen, but obviously it didn't.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you looking at, the Eagles secondary. I mean, it's been a mess. They've battled injuries. Obviously they took a chance on Sidney Jones, in the draft, injured. But I mean, there are definitely candidates out there. Like I mentioned earlier, Xavier Howard is one. I'd be interested to see if anybody in Denver is up for grabs, because Chris Harris Jr. is one of the best corners in the league, and I mean, he has been for a while. And Denver just had one of the worst showings on Thursday Night Football. Couldn't even beat the Chiefs without Mahomes. But I think there are definitely options out there. If you're an Eagles fan, I think you guys could get that repaired. Plus, you have a GM that's willing to actually do something, right? Talk about Les Snead going out and getting Jalen Ramsey. Howie Roseman is somebody that will throw caution in the wind to try and win a Super Bowl. And you mentioned AJ Green. On the other side, whatever the Bengals do, they just do things just to stay afloat. So they look like, they can compete, and they don't really – it doesn't seem like everyone has the same goal in the NFL. It seems as though, like, the Eagles, Rams of the world, they're trying to win a Super Bowl, while the Bengals are like, yeah, we'll trade AJ Green, and Andy Dalton as our quarterback is totally fine. But here's one thing I want to ask you, because everyone talks about, stats, right? I mean, analytics are becoming huge in baseball, and they're starting to kind of translate over to football. Whether you're a fan of analytics or not, do you think statistics matter when evaluating NFL player?
Well, I think, obviously to a certain extent, I think you have to look at production, and you can't have a guy putting up shitty numbers for a prolonged period of time and expect that player to be considered above average. But I think this kind of goes back to the age-old question of the result versus the process. And I think that with a lot of these stats, like QBR, for example, it really focuses on the end result, which is if a quarterback has a great game statistically, then the QBR or passer rating looks great. But to me, I've always kind of leaned more towards how did the quarterback get those numbers, and that's kind of where the eye test comes in. And for example, like Aaron Rodgers' numbers in from Monday night, if you look at his stat line, it doesn't look very good, but it doesn't look anything special. But if you actually watched the performance, he was throwing dimes all over the place. He had a couple touchdowns dropped. He had a guy his interception literally hit his receiver on the face mask. So I think there has to be a good balance of both. I think you have to consider production, and you also have to consider how a player gets his production, because not all stats are cut from the same cloth. Not every quarterback gets their production the same way. Some quarterbacks have it easier. Some quarterbacks play in better schemes where they get a lot easier throws, where they have a lot more margin for error. And same thing with running backs as well. Some running backs have better offensive lines that helps them, get more production quicker. And there's so many different variables that go into it. But overall, the way I judge players is really, like I said, I try to get a good balance of statistics and the eye test. And I think really that applies. I think the eye test really goes more for the quarterback position than any other position, because I think there's a lot of gray area when it comes to there's a lot of variance when it comes to the quarterback position, really more so than any other position in the league.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely can agree with that. And that kind of plays into my next question that I was going to ask you is, who would you call the best quarterback in the game right now, and why?
Well, I think when everybody's healthy, I think Mahomes is the best quarterback. I think that I've said it many times. He reminds me of like a bigger Aaron Rodgers, prime Aaron Rodgers, and he's able to make just ridiculous plays on such a consistent basis that it's almost expected at this point. Now that he's hurt, though, I think as of right now, this very moment, I think you'd have to say Russell Wilson has been the best quarterback in the league so far this year. Just incredible numbers. And again, going back to the previous question, where not only does Russell Wilson have great numbers, but if you actually watch him play, he does so many things out of the pocket. He makes so many plays off schedule. He does. He's really, really exciting to watch as well. So he really, so far, to me, has been the best quarterback in the league this year so far through 6 weeks. But I think now that Mahomes is out, but if you said you could have a healthy Mahomes or a healthy Russ, I would take Mahomes. So I know I'm kind of giving you multiple answers, but to recap, if everybody's healthy, I'd take Mahomes. But now with Mahomes out, I think Russ has that title.
Yeah, and then, looking at the running backs, who would you say is the best running back in the game today?
I know a lot of people say it'd probably be Christian McCaffrey from the Panthers, and I think Saquon Barkley is the best when he's healthy. I think that the Giants, for whatever reason, have just kind of underused him. And I know he got hurt, so it's kind of taken the spotlight away from him a little bit. But I really think that Saquon is just a special player. But it's so hard when it comes to judging running backs, because it's like musical chairs. There's so many moving pieces, and it seems like every year the best running back seems to rotate. But I think Saquon, if he's healthy, I think he's the best running back. I think Christian McCaffrey gets a bigger workload, and so his raw stats might be better. But I think when I watch Saquon, I'm like, oh, this guy is easily the best. And I don't like to say that as an Eagles fan, but he's easily the most talented running back in the league to me when he's healthy.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That's something I have a lot of friends who are Panthers fans, and they always like to tell me that, oh, Christian McCaffrey is by far the best running back in the NFL. And listen, I do think that Christian McCaffrey is very talented, and I think that he's obviously a great running back. But
he's a very hard worker.
Yes, definitely. And like you mentioned, I think he has a lot higher workload in Carolina than Saquon does in New York. And I also think with Saquon being hurt the past couple of weeks, it's really kind of moved the spotlight to McCaffrey. So I could see maybe why people think that. But I do think that if they're both healthy, if they're both out there working, I do think that just based, on my opinion, and just what I've seen, I think Barkley is the most talented running back in the NFL by far. But, wide receiver wise, who would you say? And this is, I guess, another position that it's so hard to kind of say who's the best wide receiver in the game sometimes, because I think it kind of comes down to maybe what people prefer, what people think makes a good wide receiver. But just in your opinion, who would you call the best wide receiver in the game right now?
I think it's ironic because I think the best wide receiver isn't on a team. I think Antonio Brown is the best receiver when he's actually playing, but because of all of his off-field shenanigans, he's obviously not on a roster. So that's it's not very often you could say that. But I think Julio is obviously just a freak of nature, and he's able to just put up ridiculous numbers every single year. I think consistency is obviously a big deal. Odell used to be up there, but he's kind of had an underwhelming year so far, like most of the Browns have. Obviously, you got DeAndre Hopkins. I think if push comes to shove, of all the receivers on a roster right now, I'd probably say Julio. But I mean, it's really there's so many good choices. It's really interchangeable.
Yeah, I definitely feel that, and I think it's really important. The problem is that wide receiver, it's really important to have a quarterback that can get you the ball. And, just looking at the Rams situation, they have Cooks, they have Kupp, and they have Woods, and, everyone's like, where did Brandon Cooks go? And it's like, he didn't go anywhere. I mean, he's getting open. It's, Goff hasn't been able to deliver the football. So, yeah. I think it's all relative in that aspect. Obviously, if you're getting opportunities like Hopkins had some crazy thing last year. I don't even believe he dropped a pass, and this year I've seen him drop 6 or 7 passes. So it's definitely interesting this year. You have your rookies coming in like Terry McLaurin that are really taking the league by storm, and he's doing that with Case Keenum throwing him the ball. So I think that's even more impressive. And then you've seen those second year guys like Cortland Sutton kind of take the next step. So. I definitely agree with you in the sense that Antonio Brown 100% would be up there if he wasn't losing his mind, and I don't even know what he's doing, to be quite honest. But Julio Jones, it's a perfect segue into to this game tomorrow because the Rams are going to have to figure out how to defend him. He is one of the best, if not the best, receiver in the game, and like you said, just a physical specimen, right? Just being able to run routes and at that size is just incredible. Something we haven't really seen since Calvin Johnson, I would say. So with that being said, I want to ask you kind of the big question here. Before the season, everyone has their bold predictions about who's going to make the Super Bowl. Well, now we're through 6 weeks. So while it's still bold, you have a little more of a picture of who could make it. So right now, Barry, if you had to pick a Super Bowl prediction, who would the two teams be?
Well, to me, the AFC is easy. I think the Patriots, barring some nuclear attack, are going to win the AFC just because, they're going to have home field advantage most likely. And I don't see any team besides the Chiefs with Mahomes who could reasonably go into Foxborough and beat them. You never know, but that's just what I see. So I think the Patriots are going to win the AFC again. The NFC is obviously a little bit more difficult to predict. I think that the Saints with Breeze are probably would probably be the favorites now because the fact that they've been winning
with Teddy Bridgewater, and people are like, oh, does this mean that Breeze is a system quarterback? No, the Saints offense has really just gone down the drain since Breeze went out, and they've really been winning based off their defense. So I think once Breeze gets back, I think that the Saints would have to be at this moment would probably be the logical choice to come out of the NFC. But again, there's so many great teams in the NFC that it's really, you could make it. Russell Wilson is on another level right now. The 49ers look like, they have a great running game and a dominant defense. And then you got the Packers, who are 5-1, even though it kind of feels like they still haven't exploded offensively the way they might be able to. So there's so many good choices, but I think, gun to my head, I'd probably say the Saints with Breeze would probably be the best team out of the NFC.
Yeah, and this next question is kind of in that same vein. But who do you think at the end of the season wins MVP?
Well, I think, I think at this pace, I don't think he'll continue this pace all season, but I think Russell Wilson right now is the clear MVP frontrunner, especially now that Mahomes is going to miss a few weeks. So I wouldn't be surprised if barring a major collapse, I think that Wilson will end up getting MVP, and I think it would be deserved if he keeps up at or around the pace that he's been through so far this year, and obviously the Seahawks keep winning.
All right, and to close this thing out, and man, we really appreciate you coming on. It's been a blast talking with you. We want you to explain why Tom Brady is not the GOAT, because here's the thing. I agree with you wholeheartedly, 100%. And I don't know if Alexis does, but everybody we interviewed, almost everybody we interviewed during the draft process, it just says Tom Brady, he's the GOAT. It is like the favorite player, the player that they most want to sack.
That's disgusting.
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of a minority thing here. I believe Aaron Rodgers is the greatest quarterback I've ever seen in my entire life, and that's just me. I think Mahomes is definitely starting to join that rank, and I think people don't actually give two shits about Dan Marino because he didn't win a Super Bowl, but I think he's also up there. So I want to get your thoughts on why Tom Brady is not the GOAT.
Well, I mean, obviously this is a subjective kind of question. For me personally, I've never been impressed with Tom Brady's style of play. I've always looked at him as a dink and dunk type of passer who his skill set is easily replaceable. He doesn't have a rocket arm. He's not a good athlete. He's not a scrambler. He's always had great offensive lines. He's always, he's had great defenses year after year after year. And I think that there are numerous. There's more than a handful of other quarterbacks who, if put in his place, could have seen, the same amount of incredible success that the Patriots have had under Belichick. And I don't know what it is, but it seems like for the last 20 years, whenever the Patriots play, they always have a fucking receiver wide open on every play. I don't know how they do it. But it's just like there's always a receiver that's wide open by like 10 yards on every play, and all Brady has to do is just sit back there. He has like 5 seconds to throw on almost every pass. He just sits back there and throws to a wide open guy, and then people just kind of slobber all over him and say, "Oh, how does he do this? He's 42." Like to me, I've just never. Whenever I watch him play, I'm like, I just don't think that this guy is the best to ever play his position. I think that he's been in the best situation, but that's different than being the best individual player. So, for my money, I would say, to kind of give you a Cliff Notes version of it, I think that he is not the best of all time because his skill set is easily replaceable and his style of play is easily replaceable. And I think there's some credence to that based on the fact that the Patriots have gone, 14-6 without him since 2008. That's, they've won 70% of their games without him since 2008, and their offense in those games has done really well. So, that's just my opinion on it. Obviously, there is a large contingent of people who disagree with me, but I obviously don't let that sway me.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I 100% agree. I think you're spot on. That's something that I've kind of felt as well, and I always, enjoy, seeing your tweets, in relation to that. And I guess, like you said, it's an opinion. People, can feel however they want, but I do happen to agree with your opinion. But thanks so much, Barry, for coming on. I know Jake and I really enjoy talking to you. We were really excited to have you on, and it's a lot of fun to just kind of get to pick your brain a little bit about the NFL.
Oh, it's no problem. Thanks for having me, guys.
Of course, man. You're welcome anytime. Let's keep in touch and, keep doing your thing because it's awesome.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
And have a good one.
You too, guys. Thanks for having me on.